guy alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon By. Taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Frank from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
Welcome to the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club. As always, I am your host, Nate, and I'll be joined momentarily by my co-host, John Bizz for part 2 of our interview with John's dad. If you missed part 1 last week, you missed the story of a German immigrant born in a small town, moved to Milwaukee at age 10, and kind of his experience with soccer from a very, very young age all the way through his U.S. Army days. And now let's jump into part 2 as John takes his dad through what it was like to be on the other side of the touchline as one of the more successful coaches in Ohio high school history, as well as the father and now grandfather of some soccer playing family members. Let's go to part 2 of John's interview with his dad.
Well, when I got back, I was stationed again at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is in the Dayton, Ohio area. And what I saw when I first got there was the open area. They have a huge museum there. They have plenty of fields there. And then all of a sudden I saw some soccer fields, and I informed myself what's going on over there. And they had recreational teams primarily. And
was it like adult recreation? Or
adult recreation,
yeah, okay.
Right. And so I got into it, and was it easy for me to play? Technically, yes. You know, there were some guys that, wanted to play, learn soccer. There were a lot of Americans that wanted to get into the soccer thing.
Well, there's probably, like it is today, there's some foreign-based players who were working in the military and they were stationed there, or like, at National Cash Register, IBM, or whatever that was in Dayton, Mead, the paper company. Like, I'm sure they had some foreign-born guys that were just living in the community that could play.
Yes, we did have some foreign guys that were in the, but again, it was a recreational league. But we were lucky, and what the teams,
soccer.
Yeah, teams we played against, every now and then I could recognize a player that definitely knew his stuff. And you're right, he wasn't stationed. Some people were stationed there also at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and some were from the local economy.
Okay, so now I'm shortly born after you get back to the States, and so now I kind of want to dive into your coaching background, because that's, for me, a large part of my life was hitching my wagon to what you were doing as a coach. I know it was quite a few years that you coached. So you were a girls varsity high school coach, a successful one. I kind of dropped some of your credentials when I introduced you. So you were the Ohio High School Girls Coach of the Year in '93, and then ultimately, after a great 16-year career, you were recently, a few years ago, inducted into the School Sports Hall of Fame. So tell us, who you coached, how you got involved in coaching with that program, and then it doesn't necessarily matter, but some people might want to know, like, what drove you to girls soccer versus boys soccer.
Sheer luck, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Sheer luck.
Answered an ad in the newspaper.
Jonathan was born in 1981.
Now you're dating me. Now people know how old I am.
Now I gave away his age.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been 26 for 5 years.
Yeah. Yes, and I've been 60 for 10 years.
Right.
But anyway, Jonathan was born in 1981, and some of the players who had children going to this high school in the area of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and said, Andy, why didn't you go coach? You've played and you know your stuff, and we really could use a new coach. And this one coach, it was in a suburb community, and they suggested that they had a boys' job and a girls' job, varsity job there. And at first, I kind of turned them down. I said, "Look, number one, I've never coached any women or at all in my life. I've only coached guys, and I don't know. Do I want to get back into it?" And of course, I had, obviously, with my job at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I was gone at certain times. So after about 2 years of being constantly
harangued by people.
Harangued, yes, by these friends of mine. I said, okay, I'll go in and take a look. And I went went to interview with the athletic director of the high school, and it was a fairly large high school. I don't. Do you want me to mention the name?
Name it. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna share this with people who probably maybe played for you. So the world can hear this. So
okay.
Yeah, you can talk about it.
Well,
it's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. Okay. Well, it was called Beaver Creek High School. And yes, and that name has been misused many times. Let's put it that way. But anyway, so I go and interview with the athletic director. And he said, "Andy, you're the one we need for the boys. Get them started as soon as possible." I said, "Well, when do you practice? When do you do this?" "Well, we practice. You got to practice at 3 o'clock or 3:30 every time after." I said, "Oh, wait a minute. I have a job also at the base. I can't just jump out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's not going to work at all." And he kind of, bugged me about it a couple of times. And I said, "Look, it's not, I'm doing this as a secondary type of job, not my primary job." And then he said, back then, that's the way they kind of came across. "Well, Andy, in that case, how about you coach the girls, and you can coach them anytime you want." And I said, "Oh, come on now." And I said, "The ladies." And so I said, "Look, let me talk to my wife." I said, "I have a brand new son at home. His name is Jonathan. And
Prince of the Bizworm soccer empire."
Yeah. I said, "I don't know how the wife is going to take this for me coaching high school girls now. Let me go back and talk with her." And my wife said, "Look, soccer's been your, in your life all your entire life. Go ahead and do it. Give it a try." And so I did. And my fortune is that in the 4 years that it was 5 years that they played soccer at Beaver Creek, and I think they won like 1 or 2 games per year.
The bar was low.
Yeah, and that I can kind of see where the athletic director said, you do with him whatever you like, And I did get into ladies. I call it lady soccers. I don't call it girl soccers anymore. And I think a lot of people ought to do that as well. And I always call them ladies. I never wanted to treat them as just girls. And it was a major change for that program. I mean, soccer was not popular because it was a losing team. And so I had to recruit players whenever I had a chance, who never played soccer before in their lives. But anyway, we got enough to at least get the varsity established. And then in subsequent years, I finally had enough players once we get into the winning records. And we never had a losing record at all the time that I played there. And I was a tough coach. I mean, I really pushed the technical aspects of the game, and not just the athletic portion, not just your speed, but I also started telling them that you better be athletically ready. Your conditioning has to be ready before you even try out. And I used to hand out things that you can do while you're getting ready to try out, right? And that built, and eventually we built, and as I said, we built into a JV team and then also a freshman team. And I always picked a lady assistant coach because there was sometimes there are certain things that you encounter in this case here.
Unfortunately, you just, as a male coaching females, that happens.
Sure, yes, and I many times I was happy that I had a good assistant coach. Mm-hmm. And by the way, most of my assistant coaches were former players that graduated from the high school,
which is good to have because they know your style, and they know the system you play, and ultimately when you moved on, one of your former players, who was one of your most successful players, took over the program at the time and had it for a few years, and we've learned promoting from within is the best way to continue success. So maybe that's where I got it from.
Yes. No, I was so happy that, and I recommended to the athletic director when I left back in my last year there was in 96, and I left in January 97, and I said,
her job.
It's kind of coming that women need to get into the coaching aspect of it also, and I really think it's important. And one of my former players who came out of Marquette University that played formerly in Beaver Creek and then at Marquette, and then came back to Ohio, and she got the job, which I was very happy for that kind of progression to come.
Sure. So every coach kind of has a particular style of play that they kind of latch onto, or a formation. What's your style and focus that you use to build that program around and to teach players to formulate their role in your system?
Well, when I first started there,
it was win more than 2 games. That was your system.
Yes, win more than 2 games, but also teach them some soccer. And but my emphasis was, first of all, when I put a team together, first of all, I wanted a halfway decent goalie, and I wanted a halfway decent defense. That's where I kind of started. And then I thought the next thing was to build up the midfield.
So back to front.
Yes. Yeah, back to front. And did we need someone to score also? Yes, we needed. And there were a couple of
I remember you had some really good goal scorers.
Yeah. And I also looked at the personality of, for example, of people that play up front. And the people that usually play up front were they kind of thought they knew it all,
They want the ball all the time.
Yeah, want the ball, bring it to me, I'll take care of things, and they had the speed, and they were a little bit arrogant. And I said, that's what makes a front forward,
Yep.
And but they also had to be able to produce. And
you can be cocky and produce, but as soon as you don't produce, you become a cancer.
Yeah.
And
bench player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, next person up.
Yes. And but I really forced and practiced the technical aspects, and just teaching them how to trap a ball, and actually one of the funny things that when I was actually teaching them how to set up a wall, some direct kick in our area, in the 16-yard area, I said, you got to put a wall together. They never had anything along that line. And when I put the wall there, and they all stood there with their arms across their chest, and I said, what the hell are you guys... I'm sorry, I didn't use hell. I said, what the dickens are you ladies doing out there? I said, well, we watched the boys, and they always got their hands across their bottom half. They're protecting themselves. Why can't we do that,
You're like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever you need.
Yeah, and I said, no, that's never going to happen here, and I always had to take... health training for players at the beginning of the season. I asked the trainer, in the state of Ohio there, and her answer was they can take a hit to the chest and it's not going to hurt. May leave them a bruise, but it's not going to hurt them whatsoever.
Well, it's funny you talked about the set piece thing, because you were talking about your technical aspect, but I remember the due diligence that you had, and I had never seen it before, of setting up set pieces and actually formulating up plays around corner kicks and direct and indirect free kicks. And I think that from my knowledge at the time, from what I could tell, like at least at the girls' high school level, I can't really say it for the boys' high school level, but I have an idea of how it went for them. It was the most cocky player who thought he could bend it around a wall, got to take it every time, and it was a direct shot. But you formulated strategies around movement off of the ball and putting players in and out of the wall, deception, things along those lines. Can you talk a little bit about that and like why you brought that in?
Well, what I realized was when the opposing teams put up a wall, and I expected our player to kind of curve it up over the wall and into a corner. That never was happening.
It doesn't. It very rarely ever happens today. It's so hard.
Yeah, and it was very difficult. So I needed to kind of come up with something else, and having just players take direct shots was no longer going to be helpful to us. And so I started pushing the ball a little bit over, 2 players behind the ball,
better angles,
better angles, get a better open shot at the goal, just move it a little bit. And I've seen that happen so often, even in the professional games where, but there they can put it over the wall.
Right, exactly.
But at that time, you needed to have a little certain trick plays that
deception, moving the chess pieces around a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, there were practices where we practiced nothing but the corners. We practiced direct kicks,
both offensively and defensively.
Yes. Yep. And it, it was interesting. And I have to say one thing. In comparison to the boys, girls soccer in high school, the ladies are a lot more mature than the boys in high school. My coach that I coached with was constantly complaining about how the guys thought that they knew everything, and it was so difficult to get them to do what the coach wanted, etc. And there was a little more arrogance involved there, whereas when I coached the ladies, they were so open. And I got to the realization, yes, they are about a year or 2 more mature than boys are at that level.
Probably, the ability to handle pressure, and you get into the heat of a game, and you got to perform. Some people can crack under pressure too, and if you're a little bit more mature and you can handle that pressure, you're more likely to perform. So for me, I love coaching players. And I know you did as well, obviously. But my emphasis was I love giving back to the game for whatever reason. I don't necessarily feel like I owe the game to give it back. I mean, part of it, but it's not my emphasis. I just love to, develop a concept or a skill set or a tactic and then teach it and then really watch it click. And that's the rewarding part for me. What was, what are your rewarding pieces about being a coach? Like what made it so great for you?
I sometimes when I watch even high school players now, when I watch them work the ball so well in midfield, or take that attack from one end all the way over to the other side where the guy is standing, the wing is standing clearly open, able to put it from one end to the other, and that person on the other side is able to take that ball down on his feet and, charge the goal or whatever. Those are the things that kind of impressed me, even at high school or even higher level. And we may talk about the higher levels at this particular point.
I'm kind of getting into that. So your thing was, it's a reoccurring theme from what I'm hearing, and it's something that anyone who I've coached, or even the guys that I trained last night, like the simple technical things that make the game more spectacular. Like seeing a player that you're trying to explain to them, they need to switch a diagonal ball to switch the emphasis of play, and they lace into like a perfectly struck diagonal ball, and then the receiver just traps it down to their foot, and then then it goes like so. Is that, am I right? Like,
yes,
really
yes.
Nailing the simple things.
Yes,
it's so. I'm definitely your son, because when I'm working with higher level players and they come from college systems or maybe even pro systems, or higher level youth soccer, and I ask them to just randomly do passing drills, just simple stuff, touching the ball with side to side, passing through cones, things along those lines, maybe dribbling through cones. They look at me like I got a horn growing out of my face, and I have to emphasize to them, it's like, okay, well, let's speed it up. Let's fire balls in. Let's see how good your first touch is. Let's see how accurate your passing is. Because if there's no defender on you, and you can't execute a 5-yard pass to a guy who's literally standing still and no one's trying to take the ball from you, and you can't do it then, how am I supposed to trust you when there's people trying to take the ball from you and maybe even trying to hurt you or whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
And it doesn't click in some players' heads that the technical aspect of it's soccer. And even some coaches, like some of the coaches we have on our staff, they look at me like the players do. Like, unless there's a defender involved and you're working on patterns, this stuff doesn't matter. But it does, because you can set up passing patterns and angles and triangles and whatever you want, and throw defenders in there and turn up the heat a little bit on a drill. But it goes back to passing, trapping, both feet, awareness, all that stuff you get from doing the simple things. So I'm really glad you said that, because now everyone who's listening to this, that I've been hammering that stuff down on for like 3 years now, they get it. But let's take it into another level. So you and I talk at length about this, like mostly like once a month probably. we talk about this and how players in our country are just not progressing versus the players that are from other countries, whether it be Europe, Asia, Africa. I mean, places where obviously soccer is probably first, I get it. It's that's why they're ahead, or it started at a higher level before it did in the United States. Totally get that. But you look at the women's game here. We were the people who set the bar. The women's American team has been the gold standard for decades, and now it looks like we're maybe digressing a little bit. What do you think are the reasons for that? I mean, obviously we talk about skills and things like that, but are there any other reasons? Is it coaching? Is it tactics? Is it knowledge? Like, what do you think it is?
Well, as you know, we have talked often. For example, when I just recently saw the U.S. women's team, and having seen them years and years ago when they were winning the World Cup, etc., and being very successful against other teams, but they were successful because they were physically much better. Mm-hmm. They were faster, bigger, faster, stronger than some of the other women that they played against in other countries. Now, I'm seeing one of the biggest, to me, what I see is one of the biggest, negative aspect of the U.S. women's team is their technical capabilities. You'll see a player, and I just watched a couple of these last games. It was against England and Japan, and I see a player from either the midfield or the back trying to get the ball up to a forward, leading them a little bit, but they just blast the ball forward.
No accuracy.
No accuracy whatsoever. No touch, no feel. To get that lift.
Perfectly weighted pass.
Yeah, so it just bounce and let that wing go at it who's got speed to no end. And sometimes the passes of the U.S. team are not as good as the passes of the other teams. And, I mean, teams like England, those people are really getting to be a lot more the way the men's teams are. They're technically so much better, and they're getting better than the United States is.
Speed of play is getting faster.
Yes. And I think the United States now is having problems with some team, and it's not because they have, Marta from Brazil who can trick everybody out of their shoes and go score a goal. Yep. The whole team seems to be more, and the Europeans have that technical growth.
Do you think that is a direct reflection on the fact that the professional game for women in the United States has just come and gone, and it's always been an afterthought, and there is a professional league here, but it gets less dollars than the men's league does, which needs to change, right? We're getting to the point now where soccer is soccer, whether it's male or female.
Correct.
And at our highest level, we got to be pumping money into it. I know it's harder to draw fans to a women's, WPSL game than it is MLS. Totally get that. Sponsors are going to pay more, but there's other ways to pump money into it. I don't want to get into that, but do you think that because the European teams are now attaching women's teams to their academies, so like Manchester City, Paris, Chelsea, those teams now have fully functioning female academies that are ladder up into their teams. Do you think it's maybe part of that, where our college players used to be the best in the world because they were the ones getting the highest level training, and then now you ladder into, okay, well, why don't we just apply the Europeans? Why don't we just apply our men's tactics to women's teams?
Yes, I agree personally. I mean, I just think the European players and other countries, their technical capability is being so much more forced upon our young ladies than we have in the United States. And I wish, do we have the athleticism and the speed, of our players here? Yes, we have that, and the drive and the wanting to win. We have that aspect of it. But you cannot do it without the technical capability and the understanding of the game, and that I think is lacking, and I think it's lacking not only in our ladies' team, I think it's lacking on our men's team.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that one of the things to note that is very much a real thing is Europe or national level soccer is very cyclical. Like Germany is going through it right now. Like you go through these ebbs and flows of success. Spain went through it. The Dutch went through it, both on the men's and women's side. So we, with the men's team, the golden era was pretty much, 96 to 2002. That was the best we've done in that time period. Nearly without a Torsten Frings handball against Germany, nearly in 98 being a World Cup semifinalist. Like, can you imagine now if the U.S. national team makes it to a World Cup semifinal? That people would go bonkers.
Yes.
We were that close. We were really in 2002. We were that close. So with the women's though, so then the U.S. national team, like we were always there, but everyone was kind of catching up to us in our federation. And then when we go to the World Cup or CONCACAF Cup or Copa America, we get invited to that, we just get our shit kicked in. It was just like, okay, well, maybe we'll get through by one win, one loss, one tie. How many times in a World Cup did the U.S. do that formula, get enough points just to get through, and then maybe squeak out a win, but usually lose in miserable fashion? But with the women, they were the standard. They were driving through it, and they hit their peak. And I equate it to like Spain and Germany on the men's side. They hit their peak, and everybody else caught up. And then now it looks like they're down. Maybe they aren't down, but everyone else is just there and doing it better. And then you take that next jump where maybe then for a cycle of players that comes in, you're down because the youth system didn't develop enough players. But eventually it gets there, and then you're on top again. Do you think that is something that could happen with the women, or do you think we're foregone conclusion that the United States may never catch up to these other countries?
I think we can catch up, and we can actually be superior to other countries if we start teaching the more technical aspect from our youth all the way up through our system. Mm-hmm. And I know American parents, and I watched you, Jonathan, play. I wanted you to win, etc. But I know that winning sometimes is not everything. Mm-hmm. But here in America, it's win, and if you don't win, guess what? You're no good.
Coach is gone.
And so look at our professional levels. If you're not winning, you're out.
Yep. You might not even get a full season.
Right.
You're out.
Not that the fact that you may be bringing your players up and you're developing better players, mm-hmm. That they have the skills and so on.
Sure.
And I think unless we start that from youth on up and start elevating it through high school, through college, and then into the professionals. If we don't do that from the youth on up, we're never going to get to anything else. We're only going to be basically, outdone by teams from different countries that do that type of training.
I mean, you look at Minneapolis City. We go undefeated last year. We lead the country in scoring. Never thought that was going to happen. So the winning part of it was great, but we were playing really good soccer. And what was nice about it is like one guy would go down and the next guy in would be playing that higher level. And the technical pieces were there for us. The off the ball movement, the stellar defense was there. Yeah, do we give up some soft goals? Every team does, but by and large, we put the pedal down because we were ready to go. And people around our circle think we were ready to go because we call it the brotherhood. Like, we just had a core of players that liked to play together. They've been playing together for a couple years now. We sprinkle in a few guys that maybe have left and come back. We sprinkle in some new players that get along with them. How much did you see team chemistry in your time as a coach? Like, how important was that to not only add on to that technical piece that you were teaching them, but then it equating into winning because it was a positive environment?
Oh, yes. When a player gives up on you, you have a problem, obviously. But if in teams, it's the chemistry in the team is very difficult to really develop, but it has to be developed where players understand each other, and they know what the other player's good at. And so as a result, this opposite player that doesn't have the ball knows what this guy is going to do. And to me, that's so critical. And again, it comes into, hey, soccer is played by 11 people, and outside of maybe the goalie, not only with the person that has the ball, but the other people are so critical. Where are they moving? Are the guys around him, or even on the other side of the field, moving into position that gives that guy who has the ball so many opportunities of where to go? And just making a pass and say, man, that was a great pass.
Or just watching the pass being made. And like,
watching
oh, yeah, good job.
Exactly. And it's... it's got to be, again, and then the person who gets the pass, guess what? Then the other people, including the guy who made the pass, has got to, maybe he's got to be back again in case the guy is, basically has the opposition, focusing in on him. At least he's got an open guy again. And
right.
That in my brain was brought up again from when I was a kid. And playing with the Bavarians, and what they so much taught me is that it's the guy with the ball is sometimes not the most important guy. It's all the other guys around him and what they do.
For sure.
And that makes the team successful. And by the way, I have seen a number of your games, especially when they're televised, and I love to watch the Minneapolis soccer team play. And I enjoy some of the things that they're doing.
What did you get to see? 2 or 3 games live?
Yeah, I think we saw 3 games when I was here in Minnesota, and I enjoyed coming to your games, and I think you show something to your fans also, and I do I sometimes agree with Jonathan with what he's saying.
Probably not, yeah.
Sometimes we do have some differences about specific players, and we talk about specific players, and let me put something in for parents, and we didn't discuss that yet.
We'll get to parents.
Oh,
we'll
get
will.
To
parents.
Okay.
So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So we're getting near to the end here. So bear with us. So I want to switch gears to talk about me. Make this all about me for a little bit. So you introduced me to soccer, and it was in some cases, like I talked to you before about, it was the best babysitter I ever had, because you take me to your practices and to your games, and it wasn't like you dragged me there. Like, sometimes like my son Gus, he knows when I'm going off to play soccer because I'm wearing certain clothes or my bag is by the door and he wants to go. And so by no means were you like, go play soccer. Even though you joked about it in the beginning, but it was definitely true. Like I could go along with you. Can you maybe pretend I'm not here and tell the listeners about how I got started from your perspective and what you saw in me from a young age?
Am I under certain restrictions? What I have to say, or
I'm
what?
not holding him at his bay here. Like he's not handcuffed, or there's no firearm pointed at him. This is the circle of trust. You can say whatever you'd like, both positively and negatively.
All right, take it. I will. When I wanted to get my son into soccer so badly, but he had to enjoy it also. And where we enjoyed soccer the most? When we were in our living room in Ohio and we set up 2 goals when Mom wasn't anywhere near. And, we tried to dribble against each other, try to put the ball through the doorway or something like that, and of course, we shot things off of shelves.
Knocked the Christmas tree down.
Knocked the Christmas tree down one time. We hit ball goes into the fireplace. And
we broke a lamp outside.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, but we just kind of got... it was, especially during the winter time, we enjoyed doing that little thing, little dribbles.
A little exercise indoors, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then we got outside and, and Jonathan always said, come on, Dad, I want you to, I want to be able to shoot at the goal. And I said, bullshit, you and I are going to dribble against each other. What do you got? What do you got? And we'd be doing up and down our driveway, back and forth, and every now and then, the ball was going into the street and we're madly running after it, etc., and not doing it properly, I guess, safely as we should have.
Yeah,
but
safety wasn't our concern back in the 80s.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't at that time. But, those were just the things. It just got to be kind of fun to get into the sport. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important. And I know Jonathan has mentioned this to me before about teams, and how much should they play. You want me to get into that a little bit?
Sure. Before you get into that, real quickly, so you're talking like you introduced me to the game. Mm-hmm. Was there a point in time or anything that I did where it clicked to you? Like, obviously we know it's my passion. We've talked about it multiple times. But was there anything that like clicked with you, like, because I played on advanced teams and I feel like I still can play at a high enough level sometimes, but like I can put my money where my mouth is with the soccer ball. Was there anything like at an earlier age that just like clicked where you were like, he actually may be good at this?
Well, when my son used to come to our practices all the time, and one of my rules were for boys when the boys team were finished, the direction was, now guys, get the hell off the field. I don't want you anywhere near your girlfriends or anything like that. Go someplace else. Go to another part of the area there. And Jonathan was with me at the time, and he always used to like to kind of hang around the guys, the boys soccer players. And one time, in practice, all of a sudden I look over, and what the dickens are they doing with my son? Here they were practicing how to do a scissors kick. And I don't know, you were what? How old at the time? Maybe
6 or 7.
6 or 7 years old, and he had a growth spurt since then. At that time, he was just like a little sausage kid, a little worst kids.
We call them shin dribblers because your legs aren't long enough to fully dribble a soccer ball. It just rolls off your shin.
Yeah, and. And I mean, here he's literally doing scissors kick and put the ball into the goal. I mean,
I remember that.
God, you got to be kidding me. And they were trying to do all kinds of, neat tricks and so on. But as far as when my son started playing, and I could see when he started playing, 3 years old, he started getting involved, and he was, he wasn't tall, physically strong, but he was so quick and could move with the ball and loved to control the ball around him. And that kind of comes from being around a ball all the time,
Making
playing.
it an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
instead of being uncomfortable with it.
Right.
So another thing I want to talk about. So like part of what I go through as far as like identifying talent, I look at people who would just like are organically able to translate what they watch to what they can do. And you kind of mentioned that. I remember the story you told for sure, but I also spent like, and you talked before about how we spent time together, hours together just playing soccer, but I also spent hours by myself in the backyard playing soccer. Not because I didn't have friends. It was like in the summers you'd be home from school, and at that time soccer camps weren't really a thing. They were, but not really like they are today. But I would, put a trash can out there and try to kick a bag of balls into a trash can from different distances with different feet. And do you think that type of creativity and free play thinking, like it does translate? Because that's one thing that like Dan Hudeman and I talk about all the time. He tells the story when last time we were on the show together. He told the story about how he came over for the first time to a play date with middle school friends, and I'm like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna start out here, and we're gonna kick like 5 balls with our left foot, and then 5 balls with our right foot, and they're gonna go between these gates. And he was like, Mom, can we go now? Can you come back and pick me up? Like, what am I doing here? But like we talk about how that type of stuff it translated into our critical thinking on the field. He's a goalkeeper. I translate it more being a field player. But do you think that there's a positive to that, or was I just a mad scientist in the making?
No, playing, doing things with your friends, etc., with no other people around in soccer, using a soccer ball is I think it's very important. What do you see on, when you see in Brazil or Argentina, you see these kids playing, poor kids back, and they're on some street, and they're taking the ball, bringing it up behind them, over above them, trapping it, boom, like that, and you're thinking, my God, where have they gotten all this?
Kid 6.
Yeah, but they're doing it on a concrete,
No shoes.
or they're doing it up against the wall. And I remember that as a kid too, just when I was by myself, and trying to get the left foot and the right foot to do things. And believe me, that's where I sometimes see, even in our professional teams, not all the players have left feet and have right feet.
Yeah.
Can do things with right feet and with left feet.
So we call it the kickstand.
Yes.
So Nate and I talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about parents and how some parents are just terrified that their kids won't develop into a perfect player, and it leads to some questionable behavior like yelling at a coach or a ref. Coaching from the stands, directing the kids. We call it joysticking, like a video game. They're joysticking their kids from the stands. And the first thing these kids do when they make a mistake is look at their parents instead of their coach, or instead of not looking at anyone, just going back to playing. They're looking for validation or waiting to be yelled at. What are your thoughts on how on this, and how do you think it affects development?
Well, I want to let you people that listen to this know, did I make some parent mistakes? The answer is absolutely yes. Did we come back from a certain game and he's sitting in the back seat, he's all sweating and he's drinking whatever he had left and just wants to be left alone, and I'm sitting driving away and said, Jonathan, why didn't you do this when you did that? Why didn't you do this, etc., and then all I got was, Dad, leave me alone, and
I know I screwed up.
Yeah. And here it is for the parents. Leave your kids alone. If you want to talk to them about what they're doing on the field, save it for another time when they're more relaxed and you're relaxed, and talk equally, not just telling them. Because in most cases here, guess what? Do we have a lot of parents that have been really successful in their lives in soccer? No. There's maybe some parents that have never had any soccer experience, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're probably the ones that are the loudest from the sideline.
Yes. And I, in talking to the coach, I I was fortunate. I didn't have very many parents. I had maybe one or two in my 16-year career that came and talked to me. And at the very beginning of the season, I always told the parents, and I always wanted to meet the parents before the season. And I said, here are some of the rules for the parents. Okay, don't do this. Don't do that with a player. But at the same time, and if you think I'm doing something wrong with your son, daughter, whatsoever, let's talk about it separately sometime.
Yeah, never in front of the kid.
Never talk in front of the kids. And but for the most part, the coaches got the job for a particular reason, probably because they are better at the sport. And though you don't agree with the coach, and guess what? There are sometimes I didn't agree with Jonathan's coach or my daughter's coach. Did I ever say a word to that coach? No. Did I ever want to? Absolutely yes. But I figured I need to give the coach the respect, what he's teaching. So kind of stay out of it a little bit. And here's another point we had about when to play soccer all the time as a youth. Mm-hmm. And we played our soccer in fall along with the boys in high school. And after that was over with, some said, Coach, I got a chance to play on the varsity team for basketball during the wintertime. But I know some of my teammates are going to go play soccer ball indoors, and I don't know what I should do. I said, how much you like basketball? Oh, I played basketball for many years too, but I kind of picked soccer. My answer was, go play basketball. You don't have to be playing, all year long, fall, winter, and in the summertime or in the spring. Now, when the weather's good outside, then I think now it's coming more so that you develop those players who play, let's say, in the spring, in spring leagues, and then play again in the fall. They do better. Mm-hmm. And there, I think it's still important. But then if they need in the wintertime to take a break from soccer, let them take a break. It will not hurt them whatsoever. And I've seen players that play round and round all years, and by the time they get up to high school, they're so sick of it.
Burnt out. Or they get to college and they're on a scholarship.
Yes.
And they hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, couple more questions. We're almost done here. So, seeing that I have two boys, and I hope one day they share our passion of the sport, I think the groundwork's there organically right now. What do you think us as parents of young kids can do to best support a child if they're interested in soccer? What should we be doing to foster that versus making it a job, like you were saying, and getting them burnt out?
Well, the first thing, parents, when you lay your baby down into the crib, etc., get a soccer ball and kind of wave it around them so they kind of get the idea.
Yeah, put the game on always when they're in the room.
Yes, and hang it from the ball from their crib and let them do everything. No, it's... you can't force it on your children. You may have been a soccer player all your life and gotten into it, and your children may say, "Dad, I'm not interested in the sport." You can't, you can't force that into children. And I say, if they see it and like it and play, that's one thing. Get them into it, But if they don't have the interest, don't force it as a parent. You'll only be unsuccessful at that.
What specifics can parents do for the kids that really do want it?
The ones that do want it, I would say look for somebody that's training them technically, that has the technical capability.
The technical capability.
Yes, yeah. To me, it's so important. And that's whether you're a goalie, whether you're a midfield forward, whatever, defender. There's so many things that you got to be able to do, and if you get that on a young age, and that continuously is important all the way through your career, gosh, I just, and I don't know how much to say. I know we've kind of beaten to death saying,
the technical aspect of it.
Technical aspect is important.
It's nailing the 5-foot view before you get the 10,000-foot view.
Yes.
So. This is a question that came from my wonderful co-host Nate. For all the parents and coaches out there who follow the game, have kids in it, or people who are just listening to the show, what coach out there right now is, do you think that brings the best approach and exhibits the perfect mix of tactics and temperament and, a personality? A lot of coaches now are personalities because they're putting out in front. Where back in the day they were kind of just behind the scenes doing the training. Who out there do you see that's doing it right?
In high school level or
Professional
level?
Because these folks will probably know some names or some teams that, if you don't know the exact names.
Well, let me put it this way: I haven't seen anybody yet on the professional level yet. Every time I see a team are playing, even the men, sometimes I'm thinking, my God, you got a forward, you're giving him the ball, and he doesn't know how to trap the damn thing. He can't turn around and give a decent pass. You all know who he is, Yeah. I'm thinking, how is he playing out there, And they all thought, well, this guy's got the absolute best rocket shot. He's right. He's got the best rocket shot, but that's not everything, And the package isn't there. As far as coaches go, I mean, and I've seen coaches that have been for the Minneapolis soccer team, and sometimes they're not out there into their players, running up and down the sideline screaming at them. When coaches don't do that, I think it's very good.
Okay.
You got to save it for when players will actually listen.
Mm-hmm.
Running up and down the field, not very important. And I've seen your coaches are pretty much held back, Now, when halftime comes, do you need to put your point forward? Yes, you do,
Turn screws a bit.
Yes, that's when you put the, and as I mentioned to Jonathan, for me, halftime always, for the first couple of minutes of halftime, don't even say anything. Let the players get a drink, let them relax a little bit, get them settled down, and then they have a tendency to listen a little bit more.
Absolutely. So I think what Nate was getting at is, like, are you like a Jose Mourinho guy, a Joachim Low, or like a, at Liverpool, what's his name, the old Dortmund coach? I don't know why it's escaping me. Jurgen Klopp. Like, those type of guys. Are any of those guys, like, from what you see, doing things right? I mean, if you want a guy who's not running up and down the sidelines, Jurgen Klopp's not your guy. That guy's dancing in the stands when his team scores. But was there any coach from a professional standpoint or a national team coach that maybe growing up or as, over the years that you were like, that guy's doing it?
Do you remember the Kaiser for Bavarians? The Bayern, FC Bayern?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Remember his name?
Beckenbauer.
I like Beckenbauer as a coach more than anybody that I've seen. Now, let me put it this way. I can't tell what's going on the scenes, watching TVs, etc.
It's pretty hard now, yeah.
It's pretty hard to make but I always kind of liked him, what he did, because he knew how to do it. As a player, he was always more relaxed and settled down with the game of soccer. And the French coach, he used to play in the French national
Laurent
team.
Blanc?
No, not Blanc. He played in the World Cup.
Oh, Zidane.
Zidane.
Yeah.
Loved Zidane. He settled the ball so well. And now he's a coach.
Yeah.
And guess what? See how successful his team is?
Almost immediately.
Yes.
And then when he left, look where Real Madrid's at now.
Yes.
People say it's maybe Ronaldo leaving, but
No.
it's Zidane for sure.
Zidane, yes.
So I think that's your answer, Nate. I think Zidane is
right
guy
now
that was doing it right. Well, Dad, I can say that I owe you almost everything from a soccer perspective. Player, coach, getting me involved in the game, developing this soccer club with my friends here and what it is, and for that, thank you so much. It was awesome that we could sit down and chat. I'm pleased you were here, and I'm happy that our listeners, although we're looking at, about just under an hour and a half. But hey, when you have a good conversation going, you just let the recording go. So I'm happy that folks are going to get to listen to this, and thank you again for being on, and thank you for being a member of our club.
Can I just say one more thing, Jonathan? Just in case you don't agree with Jonathan on anything, don't be afraid to give me a call. I'll fix you up then, okay?
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dad.
All right, Jonathan.
Another great segment, and all in all, I would say a great interview for the Bizworm family to hold on to for years to come, John. I think it's super cool that you have something to, to play for your kids as they grow up. If Gus and Freddie are still into soccer, to say like, this is where it all comes from. Listen to it from your grandpa's own words. It's pretty cool.
Right, and they can get a little taste of the beginning when he was like, I did everything in my power to make sure my kid played soccer.
Some of that stuff he said was so funny when that question, like, what do you do? He starts talking about, like, we'll make sure you're waving a soccer ball in front of their face.
I mean, it can't hurt, right?
Yeah. I want to go back to, as your dad was talking about, you and your dad talked about how he developed set pieces and strategized around that was something that he really gravitated towards as a coach, as a ladies coach in Ohio. And it feels to me like that interest and attention to detail, especially when it comes to set pieces, ended up running in the family because you love, you said you have a photographic soccer memory. You love talking about set pieces. You love getting clever and designing your own set pieces. If City can score on a set piece that you guys have blocked out and worked, it's like it makes your day. It makes the game.
Well, there's a couple things that I took away from this. One was how innovative, at least in the women's game, my dad was when it came to a lot of things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward here. But from a set piece perspective, if you boil down to our U.S. Open Cup teams that I was in charge of, or I was in charge of with like Dan and a couple other guys like Warner and Cole Erickson that helped out, or even Dustin Brandon, when we ran set plays like off corner kicks and things like that, we really were always open, and it was really just a missed execution on the kick taker for putting it where the guys were going to be. But when it came down to what my dad was doing, he was really just, like I mentioned in the interview, he was really just moving chess pieces around the board to try to optimize opportunities to score.
Yeah.
Because he like even in the game today, and I joked briefly in our conversation that like the difference between what the boys team was probably doing is the guy who thought he was the best player on the field stood behind the ball and tried to curl it around the wall, and that never happened.
Usually just went straight at it, yeah.
Or like he puts in the parking lot.
Well, you see that every day anyway in every professional league, is the guy that thinks he's the best shooter, or that the team thinks is the best shooter,
right,
stands over the ball and just boots it, when really it's like the really success. Like Jack, you'll never say that Trippier is the best shot on that Spurs team, but goddamn, on the free kicks he can curl them.
Right, but I mean that's a one out of 100 player, right?
Yep.
But what my dad was doing was moving players, putting people in the wall. It was the first time I ever saw offensive players in the wall, or offensive players, distracting the wall by shading in front of it, putting up their own wall of players that had some level of movement around it. And there was some sleight of hand involved in it. And I like you said, I love that shit, because it's like you practice it and people are like, this is never going to work. And then it works. And they're like, holy cow, let's do another one, and how many times in a game do you get a free kick opportunity where it's, like we were saying, from a direct shot, it's possible,
I remember in Madison, was it Lance Gasper? What was that his name?
Yeah.
And he scored off of a free kick opportunity, and you were just so psyched about that because it was like, you were like, just how we drew it up. Exactly where he needed to be with the volley.
It was.
And you never would have expected like an outside back. I can't remember if he played left or right. But for that guy to be in that position and be able to score off that opportunity, but that was how you drew it up.
Right, and not to beat the horse dead here, but like when you draw those things up, it's usually like the second and third option that if executed correctly are the ones that perform, because in the modern game, so many people are focused on where the ball is, and my dad talked about it with how there were certain practices where they just learned how to move off the ball. And, other teams can't combat that because they're so focused on the round object. And I think in set pieces, it's even more so than through the run of play, that if you're causing misdirection or moving people around in different places where others just aren't expecting it or not paying attention, you will execute.
Again, going back to what your dad said he really valued about some things that his Bavarians coaches were teaching him was like, you need to learn how to move when you don't have the ball. You need to learn how to move off the ball before you play a game or before you play a competitive game.
I'll give you a perfect example of it. At training on last week Thursday, we're playing 11s, and a ball was like played into a winger, and I watched the opposite side winger just kind of stand there, and I'm thinking, does that guy not want to find the ball? Like, all that guy had to do, I'm not going to name any names, all that guy had to do was a simple diagonal run and yell, as loud as possible for it, and the defense would have never been able to catch him, and a simple pass would have sliced up 4 defenders.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Or not only that, but at least put yourself in the position for a rebound if someone takes a shot.
Right, exactly.
Just because the play is not on your side of the field, don't just stand around.
So if you're a young soccer mind out there and you're listening to this, like, what you do off the ball is, and we'll get into a little bit when we talk about our player announcement, and it's why I put that anecdote in. There are certain times in a game where your simple movement, whether you get the ball or not, can be so dynamic that it creates other opportunities for people, and we just don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's baffling to me. Like, I played a deep lying midfielder, and I rarely ever moved off the ball because I didn't have the opportunity to. But every now and then, when you just take off and you make a darting run like through the defense, then they're not expecting it. It creates either space or a scoring opportunity, and you just got to do it.
Yeah, you just got to fuck with people's minds, man. Mm-hmm. So your dad's takes, once you got into it, your dad's takes on U.S. soccer development were really interesting. That in general, the United States players are missing a technical capability and an understanding of the game. You're talking about the touch on the ball, field vision, those kind of things. And there's something to be said for a culture like his or like others where kids grow up playing in the street and how those kids develop. I think we mentioned it last week that there is a soccer IQ that you don't just get. Like if like he says Americans are, you're only focused on winning, right? Do you, first of all, do you agree with that? And how does America get to a place where we emphasize that less, and it's really about developing that IQ and that feel for the game, whether it's the feel on the ball, the feel of the pass, the vision of the field, things like that?
Well, it's interesting. So last summer, after city season was over, I had some free time because I wasn't doing all city stuff, and it was sad because we weren't playing in the national final. But I actually was approached by Ian Smith, Steve, and he was like, "Hey, I'm trying to get ready for my tryouts. Can you develop some sessions and we run through some things?" And I was like, "Absolutely, man." So we 2-3 days a week we got together, and there was obviously no defenders around. There was nothing to oppose him from execution. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was, moving the ball in and out of cones and turning and having to have a perfectly weighted pass in between a gate. And, Steve is a good soccer player, and there was a lot of missed execution there because either he was tired from going through all the cones and all the, purposeful interruption that was thrown at him, but the final execution of that pass wasn't there. And when I grew up, it was a lot of just like passing. When I was playing on my own, it was a lot of like, can I pass the ball through those trees? Can I retrieve all the balls I missed on the goal, and can I pass them back to the same spot? And you have to work on that feel and that just general sense of weight with a soccer ball on how much you need to hit it versus how much you don't. And we just, how many times do you watch a soccer game, Nate, and you're like, a guy overcook or undercooks a pass, and you're like, there's no one guarding you. Why can't you execute that?
Every week when I watch Arsenal,
and there, right. and there's, I have the opportunity to observe a lot of different coaching techniques and tactics with my position at City and how we've had a couple different types of coaches in and out. And there's some that lean heavily on needing to replicate game type movements. And there's some that are like, if our guys could just trap and pass better, when you insert a defender in there, the execution's that much higher. And those are the people that I tend to agree with. I don't disagree that you don't have to replicate game-like instances, but you also have to sharpen your tools, man.
Yeah.
You can't have a dull axe if you're trying to chop a tree down.
All right. You and your dad had a lot of the same tendencies as youngsters, it sounded like. Just playing, trying shit out, practicing by yourself, like you just said, just like making games up for yourself to make yourself better one way or the other. Was that something that like rubbed off on you based on things he was telling you, or is that like some sort of a genetic ingrained obsession with soccer and playing it in any form possible?
I think it's both. I mean, there was times where we'd be kicking a ball around in the backyard, and like you said, I'd have to beg him to come out there with me and play as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
Where we would, there'd be a lot of one-on-one, and I'm not an off the ball beat the defender type guy, but I was forced to be that person when we would play against each other, and obviously he's bigger and stronger and quicker at that point. But he would encourage me to beat him, and obviously he'd lay off the pedal until I got older and I could beat him, but he didn't have to tell me, no, here you want to cut back and use your left foot. He would organically allow me those lanes where I would have to do it or I'd lose the ball, and I didn't want to lose the ball. But there was also times too where, he talked about how we used to break things around the house. That's absolutely true. I mean, I remember vividly my mother almost in tears as we knocked the Christmas tree down one year and smashed a bunch of ornaments. We broke lamps, windows, we broke all sorts of stuff. And it was just because we were just free playing soccer and just having fun doing it. And I don't think that there's another way that you can ingrain obsession in something than that environment.
I think just being able to see your dad, someone who usually you don't share an interest with as a child, experience the same amount of joy at something that you are, like being able to share that with them and be able to kick around and like see that he's got the same reactions to how things are going or to the things that he's doing or the things that you're doing that you are is pretty powerful stuff.
Well, I remember there was one instance, we didn't talk about it, but there was one instance where he went to like the National Coaches Convention, and I know it's similar in structure now as it used to be, but I remember they handed out he went to like a breakout session, and it was all about like creativity, and they literally handed out a book, and I actually think I still might have it somewhere, and it was a book about how to pull off moves in a 1v1 situation.
Okay.
And he brought
go ahead.
And he brought that home, and it was like, this is how you do a Cruyff turn, and this is how you do like this move and that move, and he he showed it to me, and I'd hide it under my pillow and read it at night, kind of thing, and it was like he didn't have to tell me, like he just introduced me to this thing that I didn't know about yet because I was too young, but we would practice those. And when I remember we were playing like our one-on-one battles in like a living room setting, and I would pull something off, he'd call it out by the name that was in the book, and it just like started to become like secondhand nature for me.
I gotta get a hold of one of those books.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. It's like
I wonder if I still have it.
It's like when you think about like every kid has a book that they obsess over, whether it's like I'm gonna learn every dinosaur, and they've just got this dinosaur
or
book.
trucks.
Yeah, right. It's like yours is how to execute a Cruyff turn, Maradonas and shit.
Yeah, like how to rainbow the ball over a defender that never happens.
Last thing here before we wrap up on this. It was interesting to me to hear near the end there, that while he really does value his experience growing up in a free play environment, his best advice is to develop those technical skills early. And I think he looks really fondly back on, it sounded like he looks really fondly back on growing up in Germany and the way that he learned how to play and his friends that he would play with and that kind of emotional experience. But when he really thinks about the game from a
coaching
perspective, from a technical perspective, like what really offered him success on a lot of levels, it's those technical skills. Like you said, it's the 5-foot view rather than the 10,000-foot view. So can you expand on that for me a little bit? Like reconcile those potentially conflicting viewpoints.
Well, yeah, that's a loaded question, but I can give you an example. On Thursday at our last training session, we were just going through some passing patterns and some touch technique patterns, unopposed from defenders. So it was just literal line passing drills, and AO is kind of nursing an injury, so he was out doing some physical therapy, and I was just kind of standing by him, and he's like, this is the shit we need to do. He's like, I'm an adult and I go to work and then I go play soccer and I never get to practice this stuff, and it's so valuable. And the guys who were on my Open Cup teams, it was 30 minutes a day in practice with doing 3 cone drills with a partner and working on volleys and touches and trapping and just moving a ball, 2 rotations and passing and hitting it through lanes and things like that. And a guy who's plays at this NPSL level is I'm starved for that. So there's a desire for that, and it does work. If you can master that stuff, it becomes second nature. But like I mentioned earlier on, the 10,000-foot view is how do you apply that into a game-like setting? And I also see that there's an importance to that, and I mentioned that. But you have to learn. It's like you have to learn how to drive the car before you get your license, right? Mm-hmm. And that's no different than playing soccer. You have to learn how to play it before you get good at it. And, there's a famous story that I tell about how a player, I won't name, who was within our system at one point said, what do I need to do to take it to the next level? And I was like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 25, 26, whatever he said. And I said, well, what you need to do is invent a time machine and go back to when you were 10 years old and learn how to pass and trap with your other foot instead of the one that you're dominant with. And then maybe you can regrow up in a totally different soccer journey and be a pro soccer player. And he looked at me like, who the fuck do you think you are? And I was like, yeah, I answered your question, I'm just being honest. It's what you wanted, honest feedback, so I gave it to you. But it's absolutely true. There's no player at the highest level who can't use both feet. Mm-hmm. Some like Aaron Robin are so world class with one foot that they don't necessarily need to use the other one. But it doesn't mean that he can't. So you have to learn how to play the game with the fundamental skills as sharp as possible in order to be successful.
Huh. Well, John, I think. First of all, thanks for taking the time. Thanks to your dad for taking the time to sit down and record this interview. I think there's so many. I really loved it. It's super heartwarming. There's just so many great anecdotes peppered throughout. You can tell that your dad has a true love for the game, a true passion for it, and he's just throughout the whole thing really excited to be able to share these stories with you.
Absolutely.
Share his viewpoints with you. If you missed last week's episode, I highly recommend going back and listening to it. It's where he talks about kind of growing up with the game, how he grew up in Germany, moved to Milwaukee, and all the way through joining the military, and what soccer looked like when you're in the army in Vietnam. During the Vietnam War.
And then how he applied it to being a coach.
Yeah,
that's a successful coach.
Yep, I think that's just. It all kind of flows into this segment when he starts talking about coaching. I really do like it. I think again, hopefully we get to talk to him together one of these days next time he's around, because there's just some maybe this summer when he's
he'll be back this summer. Yeah, absolutely.
He's just a great dude to talk to, and he's got a ton of stories, I'm sure.
Yeah, there are many we didn't get into.
Thanks again to you and your dad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was awesome, and I'm really glad I could share this with everybody.
And thus ends tonight's show. Thanks, as always, to our sponsor, Summit Brewing. Thanks to John and his dad for being on the show as well. It is almost spring. That means it's just about Maibach time, my friends, my German friends know. This sippable yet strong set of suds is going to quench your thirst while it helps you forget about the snow that just won't go away. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving back to the community means a lot to you, it is time for you to give to the club that gives back. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game. Look for us all summer, spring, fall, maybe even the winter, playing with kids in parks and community centers around the city, and consider a tax-deductible donation to what is a true city-focused organization. We just talked about the Harpo's match. Minneapolis City, NPSL plus U23 schedules are out, including that Harpo's match, and they are packed with goodness, and there is more goodness to come. Now is the right time to grab that membership. It is the best deal in soccer for only $80. You are going to get 10 NPSL home games, 7 U23 games, at least one exclusive preseason friendly, a membership scarf, a membership card that's going to get you deals on Summit at our official game day bar, Palmer's.
Much.
Oh, I'm out of breath. There's too much that it offers. Visit mplscitysc.com and make it happen for yourself. Send us mail. Hey, no mail lately.
Actually, we have one in the hopper that we never from resident content generator Bryn.
Oh, no shit.
That we haven't addressed, but we'll get to that soon, Bryn. Promise.
Pile it on. It's easy. You got to hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch, but most people do it through email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All of your questions and comments and your concerns are welcome, but if you really have concerns, complain to the club at mplscitysc. And that's all for this week. Once again, we're going to leave you with our house MC, Miles Stockman-Willis, a.k.a. Malaise. I am Nate. That is John. Thank you again to Mr. Bizworm. Make sure to get those memberships, friends, to get to that Harpo's match in April.
And you got it.
See, I see the real you, yeah, boo, I found you. So don't ever frown when loneliness is around you. I'ma show you that someone should crown you, not clown you, but pursue virtue would never hurt you. Critical in distance, touch is digital, biblical. Till death, love is unconditional. Telling us we're a team and not two individuals. For you, I give my spleen, the spiritual and the physical. Loving what is fragile isn't always fixable, but I see what's invisible. See it with vexed visuals. Grab my hand, hold it. We gon' think the unthinkable. I promise we will float, that our boat's unsinkable. I promise I'ma drown in you, let you drown in me. Reveal the recipe, you I love to overfeed. I love it. Let's proceed slowly, not go bad like moldy. Ravioli, rigatoni. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Free, girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Temptation's about to give in, but I'm staying true. If I sin, may I be forgiven for a few. What we got to lose? Nothing. You just gotta listen. Such a good girl. Great. Just made a bad decision. One and done. She looking fine. Nothing missing. But got my hands tied like I'm the villain. Evil only swallows pride, but I'm sometimes kidding. Finger licker kitty after be the kitten. Cute shit. Kiss me softer than a baby's grip. New sense of high when she bites her lower lip. If she quit, make my heart skip, then snip. When we're together like ice cream mixed with some mint pepper. Shawty had to rescue my respiratory. Wants a man who's a man, that is mandatory. Only without her off the pad like I never met with Dory. Help her write her story, take the qualms out her quarry. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Selfie Thomas as the rollie. Always be my plus one. Shawty is my bogey. In it for the long haul, not for the trophy. Every day feeling greater than Tony. Falling for her and I I think she falling for me too. I hope falling like two V's, make a W. Type of dude to build you up and make the rubble move. Type of dude to have my phone out all in front of you. Only cause you got my back. Presence always sets the mood. Never starts any trouble without any proof. No problems if there was, make the puzzle poof. Laugh it off. Goofballs, you should see the spoof. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Free. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall.